Hey everyone, welcome to the Professor Knits podcast. My name is Nikki, I'm your host, and this is a podcast largely about knitting, dyeing yarn, spinning yarn, and a few other crafty hobbies that I usually have going on at any given time. So I'm also the dyer behind Medusa Yarn and Fiber. So you can follow me here on YouTube as the Professor Knits. You can check out my website, medusayarn.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at Medusa Yarn. No, the Professor Knits _ Medusa Yarn. Very soon, I'm going to streamline everything. Maybe just make it Medusa Yarn and Fiber. So welcome, it's December. So I hope everybody is feeling happy and healthy as much as we can in these very trying times. We had a pretty good Thanksgiving, very quiet. We're being very careful about exposing ourselves, so we didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything, aside from going to work, obviously. And it kind of went by pretty uneventfully. And I should be knocking on wood when I say this, but my husband and kids and I, none of us have gotten sick. None of us have been mandatorily quarantined for coming into contact with anybody. I mean, we've just really been so careful. And I know you can be really careful and still be exposed to the virus, but we've just been so fortunate. So I'm really hoping that 2021, we see the light. I can see a sort of glimmer off in the distance. So we're pretty excited about what's coming up on the horizon. So yeah, not a whole lot going on aside from keeping our heads down. I'm doing a lot of knitting and a lot of other crafting. And Oscar's out of school now. So my husband and I have to do a lot of schedule juggling. So one of us is home with him because we don't feel really good at this point about hiring out babysitters, simply because of the climate. And we don't want him going to the after school care. Well, it's only going to be available for a few more days anyway, and then that's done. So we have no choice but to care for our own children. If you guys ever remember the second Addams Family movie, when I think they have that baby, like their third child, and the dad, Mr. Adams Gomez, he says, I only hope that one day you feel the joy of having your own child and paying somebody else to raise them or paying somebody else to look after them. Anyway, what I would give to be able to be a stay-at-home mom, let me tell you. Anyway, this is about knitting, let me tell you. So let me just talk a little bit about one of my finished objects that I cast on and finished in about 2 weeks, so you haven't seen it yet. And it is the Comfort Zone Pullover. It's kind of like a poncho pullover. It's a free pattern by Espace Tricot. And very super fast knit. It's a very loose gauge, and it's knit on like size 10.5 needles, I think. And so I like a lot of the Espace Tricot patterns because they're free, but they're also very straightforward, right? Because they're free, you're not having to pay for a lot of like shaping, and they're very straightforward, easy, accessible patterns. So I decided to knit one up, and it doesn't have sleeves. It's a poncho. And it was a lot of fun to knit, a turtleneck poncho. Like I said, I was done in maybe 2 weeks. And I love the way it fits. I don't have it on right now because of this yarn, which I'll talk about in a second, is extremely sheddy. And I don't want it to shed all over my yarn studio. But look at that halo. It's a very soft yarn. So the yarn is Aslan Trends, a natural luxury yarns. Aslan, I bet you that's in reference to the lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But this is the Invernal base, which is 50% rabbit, Angora rabbit. That's why it's so soft, but also very sheddy. 25% merino wool and 25% polyamide. And it's their worsted weight. 100 grams is 295 yards. So it's pretty generous. And I picked up, let's see, regular price. This is the Laurel colorway. And I had picked up 5 skeins of these at a D-stash at my local yarn store. One of my local yarn stores, the Yarn Haven. This is going back probably 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. And they have these tables where people bring in, and it's a big D-stash. And you can get really good deals. 5 skeins for $18. The regular $16.25 a skein from Paradise Fibers. So it was a heck of a deal. I almost felt guilty, but I thought, well, hey, somebody paid that and they just want to get rid of it for $18. I'll take it. So I picked it up, all 5 of them. And it's a really loosely ply, very soft, very drapey yarn. And the color, I do love the color. It's kind of like a dirty, muddy olive green. And it's kind of ugly in a beautiful way. Like it's not the prettiest color. It's not pretty. It's not that it's not ugly, but it's not pretty. But I do like it, and I do especially like it knit up in this particular pattern, the comfort zone, because it feels very fall and warm and cozy, and you can throw this on to go walk the dog or run to the grocery store and not worry about getting it dirty or anything like that. Like it's a very wearable color. It doesn't look really fancy. It doesn't look too I just really like it. So anyways, I knit this up in the size, somewhere between the smallest size and the medium size. I kind of just fiddled around with the numbers to get, because I knew small might be a little too short, and then the medium and the large would be way too big. So I just knit somewhere in the middle. It's a very easy pattern. Like you can figure out the stitch count for yourself, because the pattern down here it's just like a textured ribbing pattern. So it's very straightforward is what I'm saying. And it only took up just over, not even 2.5 balls, like just over 2 balls. Which means I still have almost 3 balls left of this yarn. So I've decided I'm going to make another one, but I'm going to make somewhere between the medium and the large for my mom. Because even though my mom and I, she would probably weigh about the same. She's really tall and skinny, but also broad. So I think she would need somewhere between a medium and a large. Whereas I'm shorter than her, but I'm also more petite, kind of in the shoulders. She's almost 6 feet, like she's like 5'11" or something like that. So she just needs something a little bit larger also for the length. So I'm going to knit her the exact same one. She saw me wearing it on one of our Zoom conversations, and she liked it. But yeah, like I said, it's the Angora rabbit in it is really sheddy. I wore it to, oh, hi Willow. What are you doing down here? You're not allowed in here. Go. I wore this to work the other day over top of a black skivvy, like undershirt. And when I took this off, the skivvy was green as well. So it shed all over it. But look at that beautiful drape. And you know what? I didn't wash and block this. I cast it off, sewed in the ends, and wore it. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to bother. It doesn't, maybe it could bloom a little bit, and you can see some uneven stitches that might be cared for with blocking, but I don't know. I'll have to see. We're having a cold snap here in Knoxville. It was like 21 degrees this morning, Fahrenheit. So I really, really wanted to get this off the needles in anticipation for this cold snap. So yeah, loved it. Comfort zone. I recommend it, the pattern if you want something very straightforward and easy and easily adaptable or changeable if you need to change the size. Because as soon as a pattern gets complicated with, yarn overs or not even stitch count, but short row shaping or anything like that, I'm much more hesitant to change the pattern to suit it to my liking. I don't feel like I'm that good of a knitter, even though it's probably just math, right? I just haven't done it. I haven't had to yet, so that's good. Speaking of which, let me talk to you a little bit about what I'm wearing. This is a sweater that I knit last year. It's been about a year, maybe a year and a half. And it's the Humulus. I'll just stand up. Ooh, it's dirty. The Humulus by Isabel Kramer. And I mean, look at that shaping, right? In the neck. She's one of my favorite designers. She and Jennifer Steingass are probably my two favorite sweater designers, because they always do these beautiful, simple yoke sweaters that always fit me. Like I never swatch. Who swatches? I never swatch. And I always get gauge on their sweaters, and they always fit me. So yeah, let's call this from the archives. The yarn, the white sort of creamy yarn, was a Shalimar. Is it Shalimar yarns? I think so, and they're worsted. Sand dollar colorway. And the contrast color was my own yarn, Medusa Yarn and Fiber, in a discontinued worsted base. I'm changing my worsted base in the series colorway. So it's a nice sort of fall harvest brown. Oh, I love this sweater. I might have to knit another one. It does kind of look like, wait a second. This isn't the Humulus sweater. This is the Anasha. Hold on. I've got a drawer full of sweaters right here. Okay, I am really losing my mind. I don't know which sweater this is because I thought it was the Humulus. Then I thought maybe it's the Anasha, but I think this is the Anasha. Let me just quickly go to my Ravelry page and make sure. What is that dog doing? Oh, she doesn't like to be out in this cold, and I can't say I blame her. I grew up in Canada, in Manitoba. Pretty much the coldest place in Canada. At least it felt that way. And now that I live in the South, the northern South, I don't know if you can call Knoxville the South, I'm a complete wimp. Let me see. Yeah, it is the Humulus. I'm sorry. I will probably edit that entire part out. Yeah, the Humulus. So a very fantastic, fantastic pattern. Love it. 100%. Okay, so I've got two works in progress that I'm going to show you. One is one that I've shown you before. I haven't worked a whole lot on it, but it's the Beauty School sweater by the Poison Girls. Grrrls. It's got that real vintagey feel to it, to the 50s. And I really like the way it looks. And it's an interesting construction. It was kind of an expensive pattern. I think it was over $10, which when you're just buying one pattern through Ravelry or anything, usually it's $7 or $8, but this one was more expensive. But it's a really good, well-written pattern, and the construction of the sweater is different from what I normally do. But that's what I have so far. And I'm still working on the shaping of I'm going to do a bit of a cropped length. And I'm still working on that. And then I'll have the sleeves. When I first started knitting this, I wasn't wild about it. First of all, I don't like the way the yarn is knitting up. And second of all, I thought it was too small. And I'm knitting my size. But I realized that it's just because it's all curling up so much. And once I pick up the sleeves, or is this yeah, I'm going to have to pick up the sleeves and knit the sleeves. It'll start to block out and feel bigger. But this is Medusa Yarn and Fiber. It's my own yarn. It's my sock yarn. It's on my Titan Space, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And I forgot why I don't like knitting garments with sock yarn. I know it'll be better once it's blocked up. But I just feel like sock yarn is for socks or shawls. I don't really like the way sock yarn knits up in a garment. That's just my own opinion. And this is my yarn, so I'm only criticizing my own yarn. I just feel like you can see, first of all, how uneven my knitting is on this particular one. And I guess because it's a pretty straightforward stockinette stitch potato chippy thing, I've made a lot of silly mistakes that I didn't notice till it was too late. I mean, right here, you can see something happened in here, and I didn't notice. Usually this is my like evening watching TV, drinking wine kind of knitting. And I know that I'll like it once it's done and it's washed and it's blocked, but I think I've learned my lesson not to knit a garment with sock yarn. Who knows? I mean, I've got another sock yarn here, a new base that I'm trying out that is superwash merino and silk. I'll have to double check. That I still haven't tried yet. I think I've got it for sale on my website, but I haven't actually knitted a garment in it yet. But it doesn't have any nylon in it. And silk is a little bit lighter than nylon in my mind, and I don't know if that's true. And this is technically a sock yarn. The silk toughens it up to make it technically a sock yarn, but I would definitely want to knit a garment in this for sure, especially in that color. Yeah. Stay tuned. That's coming to the website soon. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just not enjoying this yarn, my own yarn. My own sock yarn. Now I've knit socks with this yarn, and I've knit shawls with this yarn, and I love it. It's this yarn here, my Titan's base. So it's a great yarn, but I don't know. I'm just not feeling it for the way it's knitting up. Now that also could be because I had just finished knitting with this super fluffy, soft yarn. And it also might have something to do with my next work in progress, which I'll show you in just a second. But yes, this is my Titan's base in the Midas colorway. And I really like it. It's a very golden yellow. My son thinks it's orange. I think it's yellow, but it's very much a golden yellow. So Midas and the golden touch, in case you haven't caught on to the theme of my business. I was teaching some of my students today about Medusa and Perseus and that particular myth, and showed them my logo and talked to them about my yarn company, and they thought it was pretty cool. They're pretty young kids. They thought it was pretty cool. They're so easily impressed in some ways, and other ways it's very difficult to impress them. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, Midas. Now, let's see, another work in progress that I just cast on the other day. This is another Jennifer Wood sweater or garment from her Refined Knits book. I've knit from this before. I knit her Vivian sleeveless pullover. And I've planned to knit the Corinne pullover with this ridiculously expensive yarn. This is the Madeline Tosh Pashmina, and I have it ready to go. And I don't know what's taking me so long to cast it on. Maybe it's fear because it's such expensive yarn. But I do plan on knitting this Corinne pullover with that Pashmina yarn. And it's what it was knitted up for. Because look at that, right? I mean, come on. But I picked that up from my local yarn store, Loopville, back in, I think it was April. Like it was right when the lockdown was happening and there was like this push to support local businesses, as there still should be, but especially then. And I think like 5 balls of it cost me like $200 or something, but I wanted to do it. I love the yarn. I love Jinka. I love Loopville. But now it's just sitting here. I think I'm just kind of nervous to cast it on. But I'll get there. Anyway, right now I am instead doing something a little bit more straightforward. And that is the Victoria Diamond Pullover. Now, I think this particular sweater, when Jennifer Wood was on Fruity Knitting, when she was interviewed on Fruity Knitting, look at that. I think this was the pattern they were showcasing. But it's really beautiful pattern. And so I started it, and I'm knitting it on Medusa Yarn. And this is my 100% superwash merino, and it's a very fine, extra fine merino base that I'm trying, fingering weight, that I dyed up on my Hera colorway. So Hera, the wife of Zeus. It's kind of a very purpley mauve. It's my favorite, one of my favorite colors that I dye up. Very simple, straightforward, but it's got some gray undertones. It's a very classy, classic color. And I thought it would be really nice to knit that particular sweater in this color and in this yarn. So I haven't gotten very far. I've just started, and I think I had to restart this 4 or 5 times. The first 3 times, I think it was 4 times. The first 3 times was getting the stitch markers for the lace right. And I kept reading what other people had to say about it in Ravelry. And getting it set up is very fiddly there, but Jennifer Wood is such a good, intricate, succinct designer that if you're not used to it, if you're used to like these patterns that are written out and really detailed, and that you pay $10 for 20 pages off of Ravelry, then these are a lot harder because they're in these beautiful books. Sorry if the dog's barking. I think my son is jumping around up there. These books are expensive, right? And they're beautiful, like they're like coffee table books, right? I can sit and look through this book all day. And so they have to be very efficient in their words. And I think I've talked about this with this book before. But it's still pristine. It's still perfectly written pattern. But you have to be very careful as the reader and as the knitter, and you have to rely heavily and very specifically on the instructions in the glossary and things like that. And what I noticed in Ravelry is so many people were, well, no, not that many. Just a handful of people were complaining about the mistakes in this. There's no mistakes in this pattern. It's perfectly written. But if you're not super duper careful, and if you don't really understand, I'm not saying they didn't understand. I quickly caught on, like I thought when people said there's a mistake here, here, and here, I thought, oh yeah, no, there isn't. They've misread it, or they haven't followed her very specific instructions in the glossary. So anyways, to make a long story short, it was fiddly to get it going and make sure I was doing it properly for the lace, that lace diamond. And then once I got it going, I was a few rows in, and I was kind of suspicious at the, I'm so sorry. Willow! Come here, puppy! I was very suspicious that the neck was going to be way too big, like way too loose. And sure enough, in Ravelry, a lot of people said that. And what a lot of people did is when they were finished, they just picked up stitches and knitted, and their pictures looked amazing. And they just did a couple rows and then bound off. Willow! Come here! Heel! Oscar? What's going on with the dog? Can you let her outside then, please? Thank you, sweetheart. Sorry about that. So a lot of people, they just picked up, knitted a couple of rounds and garter stitch and then bound off purl ways, and then they said it was fine. I didn't want to do that, even though their pictures looked beautiful. I wanted to make sure that the lace started right where it was supposed to. So what I did is I went down 0.75 needles, or I went from a 3.25 millimeter needle, which is US size 3, down to a 2.25 for the cast on and the setup row. And then I switched back to the 3.25 needles to do the rest. That should be enough to make the neck tight enough. So that was, I think, the 4th time I ended up having to cast it on. And it's been great ever since. I am alternating between 3 skeins because this is, I mean, when I look at these skeins, I think they're all identical. But I also know what indie dyed yarn is like and how they might look identical, but as you can kind of see the difference as you go that you wouldn't normally see with it balled up. So far it's fantastic. I love it. It's charted only, and it's beautifully charted. If you know what you're doing and you remember that when you have a purl followed by a yarn over, you don't go all the way around. Little things like that I had forgotten or just needed to refresh my memory. Once you make sure you're really, really careful, it's smooth sailing. And she's a pretty darn good designer, I have to say. But like I was saying, when you go through the Ravelry pages, some people just swear that it's riddled with, well, not riddled, but there's all these mistakes that you have to catch in order for it to look right. And I'm like, no, there are no mistakes. At least I've knitted an inch. But they were all saying that it was in the first few rounds of the, no, there's no mistake. First few rounds of the charts, but there aren't. It's a beautifully written pattern. I hope the neck isn't too big on me. That was a real issue with the Vivian pullover that I did. It was just a much larger garment. I ended up with a much larger garment than I expected, but it's still a beautiful garment. So yeah, 100% superwash merino, extra fine micron count, and I really like the yarn. I think I'll definitely bring it into rotation. I think that's all I have. Oh, so another thing that I've gotten into recently, or gotten back into, is making my own jewelry. And it's not like, it's crafty jewelry. It's not like I have a forge and I'm blacksmithing out in my backyard, right? I'm not hammering steel or gold or pouring liquid silver or anything like that, or mining diamonds. No. It's wire wrapping, it's beading, it's some ceramic, that kind of stuff. And so I've just kind of gone down that rabbit hole, and I'm doing it as gifts and for myself, but I've also decided I'm going to start selling them online because I've been testing everything I've made and they're holding up. There's been no problems with the clasps or the findings or anything like that. And so if you're interested in hopping on over to Medusa Yarn and Fiber, check out the jewelry and accessory tabs that you will be able to go and check out. So for example, I wire wrapped, this is all one piece of wire wrapped gold plated wire that I made, and then added the hoop. And I've got tons of like little things like this of various sizes and other types of earrings for $5 a piece, right? Because they're just so light and easy to wear, and they might make a good gift. So if you're looking for just really inexpensive but good quality handmade gifts, check check out my jewelry store. I'll be adding to it as I make more and more jewelry. Right now, there's just basically earrings and a couple of beaded lanyards because I always wear my work ID and all that on a lanyard, and I was just kind of getting sick of the dirty looking ribbon. And one of my colleagues was wearing a beautiful beaded one, and I asked her about it, and she said she just found it on Amazon or Etsy or something like that. And I thought, geez, I can do that. Sure enough, I come home, I have everything I need. I made up a couple. I've worn them at work through the wear and tear, so I know that they're well made and they're not going to fall apart within reason, right? If you yank on anything hard enough, it'll break. But so they stood the test of time, and everything is really inexpensive and well made by me. And I hope you go over and check it out. And if you're going to be buying some yarn anyway, pick up a $5 pair of earrings. And that also brings me to my next point. I do have a holiday sale starting today, and that is for the entire month of December. All of my yarn is 20% off. So 20% off. Actually, it's 20% off your entire order. So that includes the jewelry and the lanyards and things like that. It also includes anything that's on sale, and I think pretty much all of my mini skeins are marked down on sale right now, as well as clearance. And I've got some pretty good deals. So minimum 20% off your entire purchase, but you can even get some better deals. So hop on over to medusayarn.com, and the coupon code will be there for you to use. So have a great December. I'll check back in with you as soon as I can. And I hope you're all having a good holiday season. Take care.